Welcome to the very first hour of presentations of WWC this weekend. I hope you guys have blocked off tons of time because there is so much to do. Get out there, meet some new people, learn some new things, and really kickstart your writing life this weekend because this is such an incredible festival. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my involvement with the festival and how it's helped me in my career. And I'm hoping that you guys get something out of this today too. So for those of you guys, I see some familiar faces, I see some faces I don't know, and that's great. Now we know each other. I'm Suzy Vadori, and I am the author of the Fountain series, which has the Fountain, it has the West Woods, and just out in June is the finale to the trilogy, which is Wall of Wishes. And you're going to hear a little bit. I'm going to talk to you guys about how I got these published, and I'm going to talk to you guys about my pitch. So not because I'm selling my books, but because I want you guys to learn about how I went about that and what it was like and how I sort of honed that pitch and why I teach it to others now. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys for just a moment. Show of hands, who here is pitching a project this weekend or planning to pitch it soon? Okay, I don't see a ton of hands, a few hands. Okay, so if you are pitching a project, then hopefully this is early enough that it will help you think about it. And if you're not quite ready yet, then maybe this will help you either realize that you are ready or give you some of the tools to get you ready to pitch that project. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I've got some content that I want to share with you guys. All right, on how to pitch. Okay, so pitching means a lot of different things to different people. So just to define what we're talking about here, there is pitching to agents and publishers, which is probably what you guys are thinking about. There's also talking about your project with an editor. So before you send your project to an editor, trying to give them an actual description of it so that they can kind of get you and understand what it is that you're going for before they edit. Pitching to the media. So I work with a lot of authors who, after the fact, they've already got a book out and they're trying to create their like author persona, or they're trying to get the word out there. They're trying to get some media. I was actually really lucky when Wall of Wishes came out in June. I did work with my publicist, but because I had messaging and because of the pandemic, because everybody's looking for something, I ended up getting a ton of press. So my kids actually hung this one up. This is a Calgary Herald article that was in the Herald a couple of weeks ago. So they hung that up for me for the weekend. But yeah, pitching to the media, pitching to fellow writers. How do you know if you want to get to know somebody better? How do you know if they're going to be a good critique partner? Family and friends. How many people go to a family event, and now it's less big events right now, but you go to an event and you go, yeah, I'm writing, right? And then they go, oh, what's your book about? And you go, oh, I don't know, right? I don't know. So pitching can mean very many different things. And then once your book is out into the world, you still need to pitch to potential readers. And so it's a skill that will follow you forever. So how do you put the copy on the back cover together so that they'll know if it's something for them? Or if you're at a signing and they come up and say, tell me about your book. What do you say? How do you hook them, right? So pitching is not just something that you do when you come to a conference and you come and you just talk to an agent or a publisher and trying to sell your book. Pitching is something that is a skill that you're unfortunately going to have to learn. For lots of people, it's really hard, but unfortunately, you're going to have to learn it throughout this entire process and get comfortable talking about your work. And the good news is sometimes when you're talking about your work, you learn something about your work yourself. And if you're still in that editing process and you're not ready to pitch it yet, sometimes trying to put together that messaging will actually help you finish your book. Okay, so who's ready to get started? I was going to just tell you a quick story about my experience at WWC. So this is my 8th WWC. So the first one I ever went to was 7 years ago. And I actually went to WWC because I had written a draft. I thought it was finished. I'd written a draft of The Fountain on maternity leave with my 3rd child, and I knew nothing about the publishing industry. And so I got involved with this group called WWC, and we were a lot smaller then. And I ended up joining the planning committee, and that's a whole other story. So I jumped in with both feet. And the first conference that I went to 8 years ago, I signed up to pitch to 4 publishers. So I looked at them all, and anybody who did YA, I didn't know anything about any of the publishers, and I said, okay, I want to go to the pitch session. And I was really nervous, and I asked my newfound colleagues at the WWC committee for advice, and they had tons of advice on pitching. And they all said, but don't worry, because it's really hard to get somebody to listen to your stuff, and if they reject you, like, just be prepared. It's okay. It might not be a good fit, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your book is wrong or anything else. And so I worked on this pitch, and I went into those 4 sessions, and I came out with 4 yeses, okay? So I went into those sessions, I came out with 4 yeses. Randy's heard this story, and he's laughing. And I went, oh my gosh, I got 4 publishers who want to see my manuscript. And I thought, and everybody said, well, how did you do that? And I said, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys, I actually know how to pitch. Because in my day job, I worked with startups, and I actually would ask for money. And so I raised millions of dollars for startups. And so I actually knew how to pitch, and I forgot that it's exactly the same in every industry. So then I was in this weird situation because I could go in there and tell people about my book, and they wanted to read it, but they hadn't read it yet. So I still had no idea. So all I'd done by going to these 4 pitches was I'd confirmed that I knew how to pitch, which I actually already knew. So if you guys have a sales job, or if you pitched in any other industry, it's exactly the same. But I still didn't know if I could write. And so, because they hadn't read my pages. And so a long drawn out process. I didn't end up publishing with any of those 4, but that process did lead me to find my publisher in Canada to get my trilogy kickstarted. And they ended up being the perfect publisher for me. So that was a really great experience, but don't forget that it's exactly the same as pitching in any other industry, okay? So it's not unique necessarily. There are things that we're going to tell you that are unique to publishing, but if you've got skills, they are completely transferable from everywhere else. So I am going to, from current slide, sorry, it's a bit choppy, but I still would rather see you guys in between. Okay, so today, well, not today because of the pandemic, but I'm a full-time author now. So 8 years later, or 7 years later, I'm a full-time author. I have 3 books published. I'm agented. I have 2 more books that are currently on submission with my agent, hoping to be published by big publishers. And I'm still working on my pitch. And one of the things that I do is I actually do a lot of events. So I go to schools, I teach at conferences, I do this kind of talk, and I talk about my books. And I can tell you that the pitch that I say today at an event is almost to a T identical to what I pitched that first WWC. Now, I've put a few extra things in there, and I've put a few, but I could literally say it in my sleep. And it's like that 2 minutes where I can talk to mostly consumers that might be interested in my books. And I'm going to share that with you today. And again, not to pitch my own books, but to tell you what it sounds like. And then we're going to talk about how I put that together. And you guys are going to get a chance to put one together for your own writing and see how it feels. Okay, so when I go to events, if you guys can see the screen, it's got like a couple of things here. One of them in the middle is at a library. That was an event in northern Alberta at a school where I was talking to 300 kids at a time in the library. Right down to the one in the bottom left and right corners, which was an outdoor Christmas festival, and I've never been so cold in my entire life, where I had to talk to people as they were passing by. And they don't want to be there talking to an author. They don't even know why an author is there. So what I do in my events is I actually have this stone fountain that I bring around with me. And there I had decorated it for Christmas, but I bring a fountain full of lollipops. And I know that this is not going to work after the pandemic, and I'm furiously trying to adjust because here's what I do, is I talk to people as they come by and I say, hey, can I offer you a wish? So I'm giving them something. So I've got this fountain and I have a little bucket of pennies. And again, they're not sanitary. We're not going to be able to reuse pennies, but I offer them a penny. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? And where did you get these pennies? But yeah, so I offer them a penny, and then they come over. Many of you, maybe I've met at an event somewhere, you've probably experienced this. And then they come over and I literally ask them to wish on my fountain. And they look at me like I have 2 heads. And so they wish on my fountain, and I tell them about the books. And I say, I'm letting you wish on my fountain today because in this series that I wrote behind me, 16-year-old Ava, she's moved from San Francisco to New England to find out more about her mom who died when she was 10. And when she gets there, her reputation's preceded her because her family had gone to the school and the kids aren't very nice. And all kinds of crazy things happen to poor Ava. And she gets really upset and she runs into the woods and she finds a mysterious fountain like the one that you're about to wish on, right? And then sometimes I say, but hers doesn't have any lollipops in it, and they laugh. And then I say, but when she returns to school, her wishes come true and absolutely everything in her whole life is different. Even her own family has changed. And she has to find out about the magic of the school that she goes to and the history of her own family. She meets a boy, there's a mystery and a romance. So I haven't actually said that pitch probably in 5 months now. So I think I actually missed a part, which is her wish. She throws a coin into the fountain and she makes a wish that one of the girls that she just met had never existed. There you go. So see, I screwed up my own pitch, but that's okay. So that's what I talk about when I meet people and while they're making a wish on the fountain. And of course, they all get a lollipop, right? So I give away 30,000 lollipops a year. And that's how many events I've been doing. And I've sold a lot of books that way. So my question, so feedback that I get from a lot of people is that that particular pitch actually brought them into the moment and either gave them a feeling of mystery or they could imagine that happening. They sometimes gasp, like wish the girl away, and they go, oh, ah, like that face, right? You've got to bring in that emotion and make people feel, you're basically giving them a sampling of who you are as a writer and who you are as an author. And if you can help them understand that through your words, whether it's giving a pitch speaking wise or whether it's giving a pitch on paper, if you can use each of those words, it's not really what your book is about, right? It's how that book is going to make them feel and how that book is actually going to connect with them and why they should trust you as the author. So I'm actually giving a presentation on Sunday. It's called Why Write? And I go into that a little bit more in detail. It's the whole principle behind people don't buy what you're selling, they buy why you're selling it, right? And it's what Nike and Apple and lots of people subscribe to. So if you guys are interested in more on that concept, but you really need to sort of put yourself out there. And I know that's really scary for people, right? Especially for writers, because a lot of writers are writing because they don't want to be out there talking about their books. But as I said before, if you can do it and you can connect with your audience, you can get your, I've managed to get my books into thousands of people's hands because I'm talking about it and because they can connect with it. And otherwise, I mean, the space is very crowded. It's very difficult to find readers if they can't succinctly understand what your book is about. Okay, so I am going to share again here. 1 second. Okay. Can you guys all see that? Okay, so I'm going to actually turn it back on you guys, and you can mute your screens, and I'm going to give you a chance to talk about your writing. I can't hear you, so don't be self-conscious. We can maybe see you, but you're really tiny. It doesn't really matter. So one of the things that's really cool when we have the in-person conference is I like to challenge people at the beginning of the conference for every single person that you meet to ask them, tell me about your writing, okay? And they'll probably ask you, tell me about your writing. This weekend's going to be a little bit different. I have really high hopes that we're going to be, all conversing in the same way. There's social events in the evening. If you do get the opportunity to meet a writer online this weekend, please ask them, tell me about your writing, and practice answering it, okay? And if your friends and family say, what are you doing this weekend? You say, I can't do anything because I'm going to be online 24/7 looking at all the presentations and all the replays. And they say, oh, you write? Tell me about your writing. I challenge you to try it, okay? So doesn't matter what you say. If you don't have a project in mind today, then tell us the Cinderella story, but get used to talking about it. Tell us what Cinderella is about, okay? So mute yourselves and go ahead. I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes, just talk. And I'm going to ask you, tell me about your writing, and go. Totally fine. Ooh, I see a few people trying it. All right. So how did that feel? Does anybody want to answer? Just unmute yourself and answer. How did that feel? Who thinks they nailed it? Show of hands.
That was terrible.
It was terrible? Yeah, that's okay. Because you know what? There's always a first time that you actually are going through this pitch. And if you've never tried it, you need to practice. It doesn't come that easily. And that was funny because I said that I could say my pitch in my sleep, and then I actually forgot the most important part of the pitch. And that happens when you don't practice, right? Okay, So how do we put together, if you didn't have a pitch, or if you think that your pitch needs work, how do we actually put that together? I'm going to talk about some of the things that I like to do. Okay, so what are the elements in a pitch? So you can look up a formula if you like on the interweb. There's lots of formulas out there that tell you what you're supposed to say and what order you're supposed to say it in. But they end up feeling very dry. So some of the things that I like to look at after you've done that process is, does it have emotion? What emotion do you want your readers to feel? So for mine, I've got mystery and I've got romance. And if I don't create that mystery and romance in that feeling, like in that pitch, then they're not going to trust me that I can do it in the book, right? So if you can actually put emotion in there, consider, what do you want your readers to feel when they read your book, and see if you can make your pitch feel that way, right? A story, at the end of it, we are all storytellers, right? And people are wired to actually understand story in a particular format. It has a beginning, it has a rising action, it has a climax, it has a satisfying ending. If you can create your pitch in a way that satisfies that storytelling piece, then you're way ahead of the game. That's how you keep people engaged. I actually have a shorter version of my pitch if I feel like people aren't listening. If they don't laugh at my joke about the lollipops, I actually will just end it. And then I say it's a romance and a mystery and it's lots of fun, and they go, thank you, and they go their own way. You can tell if you haven't, maybe I caught them on a bad day. They definitely didn't come to a farmer's market or to a bookstore to talk to an author, right? So that's okay. Let them off the hook. But if you can reel them in with your storytelling ability in your pitch, then it's really cool. And agents and publishers, whether they know that they're doing this or not, they want to be entertained by that too. Your pitch actually has to speak to your writing. It has to show them a preview of what you're going to have. A hook. What's your hook? How are you going to get people to pay attention? People, agents, and I actually saw this from my own agent this week. It was tweeted something to the effect of, please be specific in your pitch. You don't know how many times, and I'm going to paraphrase this, I can't remember what it said, but something like, you don't know how many times we get a pitch that says she has high stakes and she has to risk everything and then she learns something. It's like, what is that? What's unique about your story? What's unique that will reel us in, that we want to actually listen and we want to actually read, right? So preparation, you're selling yourself as well. So guys, if you're throwing something together slapstick, if you've got an opportunity to pitch to somebody this weekend, make sure that you're prepared. Practice it, record yourself on Zoom. If you go into Zoom and create your own meeting, it's free. You can record it and you can watch it back, and it might make you cringe, but it might also help you. You can talk in front of a mirror, tell your friends and family, whatever it is to get you a little bit more comfortable with that. You owe it to yourself to practice, okay? And if it's a written query that you're putting a pitch together for, then make sure it's professional. Get a second set of eyes, read up on what should be in a query. Make sure that you've done your research. Confidence, ask for the sale. So this one, might sound a little bit weird, and it's definitely applicable if you're at an event and you're trying to get new readers, but it's applicable everywhere. If you have the opportunity this weekend to be in front of an agent or publisher, tell them what you want. My hope is to, I don't know what it is. My hope is to, hook up, help me find the right publishers so that I can do whatever it is that you want to do. Be specific and ask them for it. Don't be afraid, okay? And then the last one in the bottom right corner there is show, don't tell. And what does that belong in a pitch, right? Show, don't tell, and people roll their eyes. If you guys follow me through this weekend, you're gonna hear show, don't tell in almost every presentation, because it's honestly the most important concept in writing. And it's also important in your pitch. So if you guys aren't familiar with show, don't tell is the concept of showing your readers what's happening instead of telling them. So bringing them into the moment and giving them very specific details versus telling them what happened off screen. Okay, so it's being in the moment versus recapping something. And there's lots of other ways to explain it. And I actually go into more detail on that in both picture manuscript, and I think probably also in the goals presentation that I'm doing this weekend. So if you guys are interested. But show, don't tell in your pitch. So show, don't tell, the whole concept of it is to hook your readers by planting things in their mind that allow them to create pictures. So it's actually a brain chemistry thing where your brain lights up if you've been given specific details. that you can picture. So when you guys have ever, if you've ever stayed up all night and read a book and couldn't stop flipping the pages, it's probably because you almost saw that book like a movie in your mind, right? And when done correctly, this show don't tell thing does that. And so be aware of that, okay? Many pictures that I see are very telling, and if they can get more specific and in the moment, Ava runs off into the woods and finds a mysterious fountain, right? You can almost feel like you're there versus telling us what happened, okay? So don't forget that really important writing concept can also translate into your pitches. Okay, so keep your pitches really simple. So add all that extra stuff in, but also keep it simple. That's a tall order, right? So it's gonna take some practice and it's gonna take some time. But focus on your story, okay? So take a minute, if you've got a pen and paper, and just think about your story. Who are you writing it for? Get specific, okay? Why is your story different than anything else that's out there? So make sure that you mention the unique parts, okay? What's the point of your story? Okay, that sounds kind of rude, but what's the point? What are you trying to convey? What are you trying to say about humanity? What are you trying to say about the greater world? And maybe you're not. Maybe you're just trying to entertain. But if that's the case, what is the point of your story? And then you can pull that into your pitch as well. Why are you the best author to write this book? Now, this is a little bit longer for a query or something else, but what agents and publishers are looking for is not just that you have an amazing story with an amazing hook. Why are you the best person to write this book? Okay, so think about that when you're writing your longer pitches. When you're just pitching to other people, you may not be. If you're writing a nonfiction book, then this might be very important in your pitch. Why are you the best author to write this book? What's the most exciting part? Now, I'm not saying give away all the spoilers, although you can do that if you are, if you're pitching to agents and publishers, it's perfectly fine. You don't want to tease them. You can give away the spoilers if it's important to what's exciting about your book. So make your pitch exciting. Think about that first spark. When did you first think of writing this book or writing this series or writing this idea? Think of that first spark and see if you can bring that into the pitch. Okay. And then some details that will convey your passion and the mood of the story. And we've talked a little bit about that too. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a chance to take another shot. I'm gonna give you about 1 minute to write down things, and then I'm gonna tell you that it's time. And then if you want to turn on your mic, you can, and we can pitch into mayhem. And we'll all be pitching at once, so we won't really hear what you're saying anyway. Or you can do it on mute. You're perfectly up to you. But take a minute and write down some of the things and just sketch out some ideas and then try it. Okay, so I'll give you about a minute. I'll time it. Really take this opportunity. What do you write? I'm asking you, what do you write? What do you want to tell me about your story process? What do you want to tell me about your amazing idea? When this is done, after we all do it as a group, I will give you the opportunity to try it out, and we'll give you some incredibly supportive, positive feedback, I promise. But that'll be up to you guys. Okay, so we've had a few moments. So if you guys want to unmute yourselves and talk into oblivion, go ahead. I'm hoping that some people do. When we do it in smaller groups, we always do it unmuted, and it creates chaos and it's super fun. If you want to stay muted and try it again, then go ahead. All right, tell me guys, what do you write about?
I write about children's books, and I really love morals, and I like children being inspired by something they need to read to understand the world at large. These are silly characters, but they always are transformed in the end, and it's a wonderful opportunity to watch a child learn how to grow and depend on their own confidence.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, so everybody's done talking. Thank you. Is it Judy? It says Judy. I'm not sure if that's, yeah. So Judy, thank you for being brave for taking this opportunity to get some feedback. So I learned a lot about why you write books, which is super cool, right? And that makes me want to learn more. And that makes me want to understand more about what it is that you write. And you've also said, so you probably have multiple projects that you're talking about all at once, and that's really difficult. But you said that they all have morals and that they all, so now I know who my readers are. So if I'm a grandmother going into a bookstore and I talk to you, I learned that maybe you've got books for my grandkids that would appeal to them, right? Perfect.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to pitch to us? Be brave, go ahead. I can't see you all. Go ahead, Randy, let's hear it.
Okay. A 12-year-old boy wakes in the middle of the night. He's heard a noise. He creeps downstairs and finds his mother lying in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor. Jump forward 20 years. His father, charged with the murder, is on the run. He joins the police department and becomes a homicide detective, but he suffers from PTSD, so he quits that and becomes a private investigator. And now he's solving crimes as he tries to find the killer, his mother's killer.
Awesome. So Randy, who else here felt that 12-year-old boy going down the stairs and finding his mother on the floor, right? Horrific, right? And surprising. And I think because I read Randy's, I'm a fan, I read Randy's mystery stories, I think that's awesome because it's surprising and it sets us up to learn his character. So great hook, Randy, good job. And good showing, no telling, and putting us in that moment and having us experience that, and then the why your character is going through this journey is really clear and what the stakes are, right? Why he becomes a homicide detective is really clear. And I think that's really cool. I didn't talking about multiple projects, but what's interesting is both Randy and Judy were talking about multiple projects, and that's really difficult. I found that people like the fountain story so much that I say yes, and then there's also book 2 and book 3. So that's how I've been pitching it, right? And I see Dan's like howling there. But yeah, because I tried to incorporate it all into it, and really the whole series is about the same sort of thing, and so it works because the whole series is about consequence and making wishes. But yeah, good job both of you guys on incorporating multiple books and making me interested in the whole series. Who else wants to try pitching?
I will.
Go for it.
Okay. This is a true story. Two RCMP officers are assigned to an Indigenous community, which is one of the most violent communities in Alberta. Their first call out is the suicide of a 9-year-old girl. So as a group, they decide to start a cadet program. The cadet program, they think, none of these kids are going to join because they're all involved with gangs that have taken over their community. Yeah. Instead, 180 kids show up on the first day.
Wow.
The program keeps growing until it reaches 1,500 members. It becomes the world's largest cadet program. The problem is the community does not want it. There is racism involved in both sides, and when the government offers $1 million to expand the program, the community shuts down the program and the RCMP are ousted. The good news is the youth have learned how to become leaders and they take over the program.
Amazing, amazing. And it's a true story, which you say right off the bat, which immediately gives you credibility. So I love that. I would say that as you're going through, it's kind of similar to Randy's, where something happens to a 9-year-old girl, and immediately when something happens to a child, it's shocking and brings us into that moment. One of the things I would ask you, if you pitch that to me, or were sharing that with me, is I would want to know whose perspective the story is written from. And just as a note, whose perspective are we going to travel through this story in, and how do they feel about those events? What was the moment like? All of a sudden they walked in and, there was 180 smiling faces waiting to be part of the program. Pieces in so that we can feel that emotion, because you told us what's going to happen, but I'm not clear whether this is from the perspective of the kids who benefit from the program, whether it's from the perspective of the people who started the program, those types of things. So it's great. The story sounds interesting. It would be interesting enough for me to want to know more. I just think you could probably add that component to it, and then I would understand better what your book or your piece or what your writing is going to be about.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, good job. Anybody else want to try?
I'll try.
Oh, let's hear it, Dan.
All right. Lucas Colt is a mid 20-something adult who is very happy with his small little life. However, he is plagued by demonic nightmares. As the nightmares worsen and intense, they start to affect him during the day, which causes they start to affect during his. They start to bleed over into his day. So he's having daymares, and they see. I can't do this.
Yeah, but that's okay.
And then he,
but now you know where you're stuck, right?
Yeah, they bleed over into his daily life, and it begins to unravel an entire mystery surrounding his heritage and a battle of good versus evil.
Awesome. Now, full disclosure, I very recently gave feedback, editorial feedback on the first 3 chapters of this, so I know a lot about Dan's story. So one of the things, same feedback that I just had for Teresa, when you're talking about the nightmares, you have such cool imagery there. Use it. Use it. Tell us what they look like, right? Show, don't tell. So if you were to tell me, and I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but show us what that nightmare looks like and how gripping it is, and that it starts to affect his daily life, and then I would understand it a little bit better. But yeah, good job, Dan. Thanks for being brave. All right, I can take one more if anybody's got time or anybody wants to do something.
I will.
All right,
who am I?
Okay, Pamela?
Hi, Suzy. It's Pamela.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Let's hear it, Pamela.
I'll try. Okay. Meg Spencer is a recently retired homicide detective who just wants to move to Victoria and just have peace and quiet for the rest of her life. But she's finding it difficult because she keeps finding dead bodies everywhere she goes.
I love it. So is that the whole pitch? Yes?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So
something
I
I
love
would say
it.
to other people, which I have to say.
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. Can you repeat that?
Oh, that's something I would say to other people to try and interest them in the story.
Yeah, awesome. So here's what I love about this is it's actually humorous, right? So is there humor in your book or series?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
they have a lot of humor in them, yeah.
So she's done a great job. In those couple of sentences, she's managed to say, but she finds dead bodies everywhere, which is like slapstick and humorous and tells you right away what her series is about. So I think you nailed it in that. I mean, I'd want to know more if it was a specific book. I'd want to have a little bit more context. But in terms of hooking me, if I'm interested in mystery and I'm interested in humor and reading a humorous mystery, I know right off the bat your voice has come through really clearly in that pitch. So good job. All right, was that helpful to you guys? And if you guys want to run through that again, or if you want to ask questions about it, I am always available. So I am going to flip forward. Sorry, that is not what I wanted to share, but that is fine. I will go. Okay, so yeah, so I challenge you guys, for everybody that you meet to speak in online, and I hope that these opportunities are going to come up if you attend the social things in the evening and whatnot, and you have an opportunity to introduce yourself, try it. And don't worry about it. Like, everybody's been there doing it the first time, right? But really listen to the answers that you get. Listen to the people who just pitched. Notice the ones that you're drawn to, and notice if people ramble, right? You don't want to be monopolizing the conversation and talking about it for like 10 minutes. That's not a pitch. That's you wanting to talk about your book, right? So have something that's succinct, and if they want to know more, then by all means engage in a longer conversation, right? So, but practice it in the bathroom, write it out a few times, say it out loud in the mirror, or record yourself on Zoom, and don't shy away from the chance to tell people about your writing. Okay, so this one I also wanted to recommend. If you guys, and right now it's a little bit different, but this is really about pitching to people in person and signing. So when those start to open up again, my good friend and colleague, Adam Dries, has actually shared a lot of what he learned about pitching in person and setting up events in his book. And so I like to recommend that because people come to me a lot of times and ask me, you know, what it's like to do these events, what kinds of numbers they can expect, how to track it, how do I predict how many books I'm going to sell, all of that stuff. I learned most of what I know from Adam. I mean, I've added to it, but I've learned a lot from Adam, and he actually is super generous in this book and shares it. So if you guys are interested in the nitty gritty of events and what that looks like, you can ask me, but I'm probably going to tell you to go read the book. All right, so that is me. I'm going to open it to questions, and I just wanted to highlight, I'm doing a ton of programming this weekend, so if you had a lot of fun, I do have the ones in bold are the ones that, well, they're not all in bold for some reason. Okay, so at 5 p.m. today, I have one that fixes that manuscript, where I talk about some of the most common problems that I see in manuscripts as an editor and book coach. And then on Sunday, I'm doing a 1 p.m. on why write. So it gets to the heart of what I talked about earlier, that people buy why you're writing it and not what you're writing. And then at 4 p.m., I'm doing turning your goals into, so to close out the festival, doing, you know, 2020 was not the year that any of us expected, me either. But the most common thing that I'm getting right now is calls from people who are kind of got off track and need to talk it out on how to set themselves straight. So I'm going to actually share with you guys a bunch of tools that you can use to set your goals for 2020 and get your writing life back in shape. So, but what I wanted to do right now is to, oh, and my website's down there at the bottom. It's www.suzyvadori.wordpress.com if you want to find out more about my book coaching and editing. And that is pitching today, but I open the floor to questions. Does anybody have questions about pitching? I answered all your questions about pitching.
I do have a question.
Yes, Dan.
When we're doing, so when we're talking about the pitch, this is not the same thing that would go on the back cover of your book as a blurb, right? Or is it similar?
So yeah, very good question. It is similar. The blurb can, so one of the biggest differences between it is in your blurb, you want to be a little bit more vague. You want to give a few details to set them in the story, but you can't give away the punchline. In the pitch, especially for agents and publishers, it's okay to give away the punchline, right? So you do need to change them up a little bit, but they should be very similar. Yeah, they should be very similar. You want to make sure that the stakes are clear. What does your person want? The setting is clear. All of those things still apply. And it is really a sampling of your writing, right? It decides whether or not people are going to pick up your book. So yeah, all of the same things apply.
Suzy, I see a hand up from Stephanie Pearson.
Perfect, Stephanie, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question. Because in the directions that you gave about this, I've never done the pitching before. I've written query letters and everything, but you know, you said why and like who are you writing it for? And I mean, I like the pitches that they gave, but I'm just trying to figure out like how much of that do you say? Do you tell?
Yeah, so I think what I meant by that, and I'll have to go back and make sure that that's clear in the slide, but who are you writing for? So not who are you writing the pitch for, but who is your audience of your book, right? So because I'm writing for young adults, my pitch is going to be slightly younger than if you're writing, you know, a crime novel for adults or a slasher thriller, right? So who is your audience? And try to have that voice come through. So I'm sure that when you're writing, you actually are really specific about the language that you use in your writing. Be specific about that in your pitch and have that come through. So, you know, I don't want to say, if I was to write a pitch about the fountain and I made it sound super academic, then that doesn't have any confidence in me that I know how to write for teens or that I could hook a teen, right? So I think that's what I meant by that. Does that answer your question?
I think, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I took notes and maybe I got confused, but it's not just the why, but like, why are you, like, why would I be the person to write that book?
Yeah. So in that particular case, that's usually a follow-on. So if you're talking to somebody in person, it's usually a follow-on. People, like usually you know, I'd say 10% of people will say, what led you to write this series?
Okay, yeah, because my family and friends would know.
Yeah, exactly.
Know.
Well, they might not. I'm always shocked, especially if I'm at an event or a signing. I'm fairly involved in lots of different communities in Calgary. I have 3 kids in 2 different school systems. They play sports. I know a lot of people. I grew up in Calgary. I know a lot of people in Calgary, and I was a business executive for 20 years before I became a full-time author. So it is very, very common for me to have somebody see me at an event and be completely shocked that I've written a book and have no idea about that side of my life, right? So it's a question that I answer a lot, but to strangers, to agents and publishers, it's like the number 2 thing that they're looking at, right? What is the story? Do I think I can, does it fit? Does it make sense? Can I sell it, right? That's what they're thinking. And why this author? Because lots of people are going to be writing something in a similar genre. So there's lots of reasons that you could be the right person. Maybe it's because your voice is amazing and your passion comes through. Or maybe it's because it's a true story, Teresa, and you have some knowledge or you have some experience in that, or its own voices, or, like there's lots of different answers to that question. But it's definitely a question that I've heard from agents and publishers time and time again. Why are you the right person to write this story?
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't know when it's going to come up. If you're writing a query letter, I would include it.
Okay.
Right.
That's good.
Subtly, like not.
Yeah, I know.
Try to weave it in. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
It looks like we have Melanie McFarlane asking to ask a question.
Awesome. Go ahead, Melanie.
My question kind of builds off of Stephanie's question.
Sorry, I can't quite hear you. Can you just speak a little louder? Yeah.
Is this better?
Oh, way better.
Oh,
Thank
sorry. You. Okay. So I'm just building off of Stephanie's question a little bit because if the pitch isn't to other writers and say it is to a publisher or something, would you want to include, would you want to have comps ready to discuss, or even your own writing platform if you have a good established large platform or awards? Would you want to include that in that pitch, or kind of wait for them to,
Yeah, so in a query letter, you would include that. In person, not unless they asked you. Yeah, but have that ready. Comps is a really good question. It's one that I really struggle with because I always feel like my own writing is very unique. But I try to isolate it, a way to find something comparable. It's never going to be the same as any story. And what I'm hearing a lot in publishing lately is, that people aren't willing to take risks. So they want to know that your book is like something that was successful, yet totally different, right? So that's a tall order. So I want it to be exactly like everything else out there, but it has to also be unique. So comps are really tricky. I like to take, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but what I've done in the past is take aspects. So I'm writing a contemporary YA novel right now, and I use as my comp a Netflix series that includes a treasure hunt, because I've got some sort of, pirate type theme in it. And I love that feeling of that Netflix series. And then I also used a book that's completely unrelated, but it is a YA contemporary that has kids in it that have grown up together and the complicated relationships that they have because they've known each other their whole lives. Now, my story is completely not the same as either of those two things, but I looked at the contemporary, and it's set in Canada. I looked at the contemporary Canadian YA books, and I didn't want to compare to any of them because I didn't think that they really were what I was writing. So if you can isolate, if you're looking for comparables, if you can isolate pieces of it, that's one way to do it.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Or everybody ready to pitch? Did anybody learn, can anybody share with us what they might change about their pitch for the weekend? No?
I think I've got to work a lot on.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think I've got to work a lot on the specificity of mine because it's pretty broad. It sounds a lot like the back of the book flap instead of a proper pitch.
Yeah, and I think especially if you're pitching to agents and publishers, you want to make sure that you call out what's unique about your book in a way that makes sense, right? We don't want to bore them with lots of info dumping, but if you can show don't tell and include some specifics that make your pitch stand out, then I think that's awesome. Was somebody else trying to talk at the same time as Michaela? Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
I just wanted to say that I hadn't thought about my pitch because I did when I released book 1. Today I released book 4. My pitch needs to be different now, right?
Yeah, well, I invite you to use my strategy of still pitching book 1 and then I have 3 more books, but I don't recommend it.
I need to do that too. But I actually need a pitch for the series, and I started that today, so thank you.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing more about it, Randy. Norm, did you have something too?
I just want to thank you. I really hadn't thought about this before. I'm writing a novel, and it's very long, and the comparison would be to something like Stephen King's The Hill. It's speculative.
Yeah.
It's apocryphal. It's very, well, I said it already, very long. And it's based on the concept about women taking over the world, ruling the world. It's really complicated. That's all I can say right now.
But yeah, it is really, you know what, guys, writing a book is hard, and writing a book is always complicated. Books are long, right? And so that's why there's a little bit of work to do in terms of why, you know, I talked about finding that spark, why you wrote the book, all those things. What is the, how can you boil it down? It's really hard. It's not an easy thing to do, right? So yeah, your book is complicated, and when you're in the process of doing it, you're aware of all the subplots and all the things that are trying to come together. When you do the pitch, you've got to boil it down to what the most important things are, and not everything belongs, right? And you've also got to draw us in with your storytelling ability. So it's a tall order, and that's what I'm saying is take the time, practice it, try it out on people and see how they react. So I'm just going to quickly go through the chat because I think we've got, okay, so Kalina says, I write fun, futuristic romance with an inspirational twist. Very cool, very cool. So tell us a story about it, right? Tell us a story, instead of just telling us what you write, tell us what happens to your characters in a fun, futuristic romance way, right? And Dan says he can't hold his phone anymore. I just tired. Yes, Melanie.
I just wanted to say that I'm in a different position than probably most of you, because I almost didn't take this course because I'm moving from, I've published several nonfiction books, and I'm for young adults, and I'm getting into fiction. And it's interesting that I found this extraordinarily helpful, and I developed what I really should be writing about. So this almost for me is a great first step. If right now I'm being asked why me, I'm changing what I've decided to write about, because to me, if I'm selling myself, I have to be able to do it right from the beginning before I even develop the plot almost, right? So this was super helpful, so thank you.
Yeah, and you can revisit it no matter what stage you're at. I mean, it is the most helpful to think about it at the very beginning, but it's certainly something that sometimes you've written a whole manuscript and then you have to revisit that, and you're not quite sure why it doesn't work, and when you put it all together, it kind of falls into place. So I'm glad that it was helpful. Yeah, I come at it from a really different perspective, I think, but pitching is something that happens at every stage of your writing career. Randy, how many books do you have out now? And he's like, oh yeah, I got to write a pitch for that, right?
Well, I got 7 novels out, but to give an idea here, when I write a novel, the first thing I write is the blurb for the back cover. I write that first. It'll change, okay? But that is my pitch. It's like, this is what I'm going to write about. And then I go and write the novel, and then I'll go and revisit the back cover blurb at the end.
Yeah, awesome.
Suzy,
yeah, go ahead, Judy.
I just wanted to thank you, because what I realized in doing my pitch with my nerves and everything, but that, yes, it is similar stories, but I think I will benefit from specifically what is the hook story. You know,
awesome.
So go into that first and then say, but I have a whole series of these type of stories, so that they know there's more than one story in there, but that they know what type of stories in that first one.
Absolutely. And so that's the concept of going from telling, which is like from a 30-foot view, to showing, which is immersing us in that and forcing us to go along with your story and to be in there. And that's the moment that every reader craves, that moment, whether they know that or not. They crave to be in that story with your characters. I see that there is one more question. I'm going to make one more comment, and then I think there's one more question. Yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
I was wondering if you can put your email address back up there and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do that at the end. No problem.
Yeah, and thank you for your time.
Oh, no problem. So Kelly has said, Norm made a good point without realizing, I think, mentioning big names that your story is like Stephen King is a great way to quickly tell someone that might like your story. Absolutely. And that's what comparables are all about, is trying to draw in who are your readers. And so if your readers are going to be Stephen King, I do caution you, not to take the biggest names out there or the biggest books out there, because if you're writing YA and you say, I've written a story just like Harry Potter, they want you to dig a little bit deeper and mention some other ones around it as well, because nobody's like Harry Potter. But yeah, no, it automatically, as soon as he said that, for readers of Stephen King, I think that's awesome. And then Barb Geiger has a question. Barb, go ahead. Can't see you on my screen right now.
It's a question, but a comment, because I think one of my favorite Mark Twain quotes is, I don't have time to write a short letter. And I think if you can't tell your story, your complex story simply, you may still be several drafts to the draft that you can tell simply, or several books from the book that you can tell simply. Like, pitching is the end result of having a story that's almost out the door. So if the pitch doesn't work, maybe it's because the story still needs more story.
Absolutely. Or maybe you haven't discovered the heart of your story yet. And, some people do discover that after their stories are published. And so hopefully you do that work up front and discover it. So thank you, Barb. That is amazing and insightful. And I think that is an awesome, awesome place to end this. I'm just going to share because it was requested. I'm not sure that my email address is on here. My website is suzyvadori.wordpress.com, and my email address is suzyvadori@yahoo.com, and you are welcome to contact me. I am also on every social media platform that exists, and you can find me there. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate your time. Good luck, and drop me a note if you pitch and it goes well, and drop me a note if you pitch and it doesn't go well and you know what you want to do next time. I'd love to hear from you.